Well, hey y'all, I'm here to do another knife review. It's going to be on a Rough Rider Barlow, but before I do that, I'd had this old belt buckle that I had put in a couple of my videos, and somebody was asking me about it, so I thought I'd show it to you. Unfortunately, a friend of mine's mother died, and he was going through her stuff, and I used to be a bull rider back in the old days, and he knew that, and he said, hey man, I got something I think you might like, and he had this old buckle that I guess was one of her boyfriends back in the day or something. It says Santa Rosa 1955 New Mexico High School Championship. So this buckle was, we're not sure whose buckle it was, but it was from 1955, and I don't know if you can see it on the back. It tells the person who donated, but it, solid sterling silver. And I guess back then, even in a high school rodeo, they gave you a sterling silver belt buckle. And anyway, that's what the story of that. I think it's pretty cool. Piece of nice history from 1955. This is a knife. This is a Barlow knife made by Rough Rider. And if we zoom in close here, zoom in by grab it and hold it up to the camera, it's got the old spelling of Rough Rider. They spell it R-I-D-E-R. And you'll notice that the new ones spell it R-Y-D-E-R. I don't know the exact reason for that. I think they had a reason, but I'm not sure. Anyway, some people like stories on knives, and the story on this knife was I was dating a girl that lived in a little town called Rio Medina, which is outside of San Antonio a pretty good ways. And it was a pretty good little haul to drive to go see her where I was living at the time. And so I actually got there kind of early. And so to kill some time, I went to this little hardware store they had in town. And it is cool, man. It was just this, not very creative in their name, but it was called the Rio Medina Hardware Store. And there was this old building, and I think I talked to the owner who also works there and does everything. And he's telling me that store had been there since he thinks it was the early 20s or earlier, but he knows at least 1920 that store had been there. And you walk in and they still had some stuff for sale that had probably came in new in the 1920s. And so they had, because it's an old-fashioned store, they had all kinds of cool stuff, nails, bolts, whatever. And then they sold a really good selection of pocket knives, which any good hardware store should do. And, of course, they had some good ones. They had some old case knives. But they also had a little selection of Rough Rider knives. And I saw this little guy sitting there, and I thought it looked cool. So I bought it. It's a little Rough Rider Barlow. And I later found out this is in the gun stock checkered bone. And that is brown bone. And the checkering is really nice. Has a really good tactile feel to it. It obviously is one of the earlier Rough Rider knives. I don't know if it's right when they came out or, I'm not sure exactly when Rough Riders came out, but I know it's pretty old. I have a copperhead in this same bone pattern as well. But this has been a great little knife. And when I got this knife, I had a bunch of, at that time, all those overbuilt tactical folders were coming into vogue, by Zero Tolerance and, Medford Praetorian. I always say that because I had one, but I sold it. Other really overbuilt, knives that you could, split open a tank with and stuff like that. And I had a couple of them because I bought into that. I thought it was pretty cool because I love knives. But when it came to going out the door or I had to go do something, I at that time I found myself carrying this knife a lot. I carried it all the time. I never even thought about it, and it pretty much rode in my pocket every day for 2 years. And during that time, it either rode in my pocket with another knife, and most often by itself. And I didn't even think about it because it's so handy and so classic and so, to me, cool. It's a Barlow that I just grabbed it and didn't even think about it. The Barlow knife, you might remember if you ever watched Huckleberry Finn, if you ever read the book Huckleberry Finn, and Tom Sawyer. Tom Sawyer talks about getting a Barlow knife, and it was like the greatest thing he ever had, and it was like Excalibur, and he could do all of these great things with his Barlow knife, you know, fighting off bandits and pirates, and it's, you know, just a pretty cool time. Obviously, it's a fictional story, but what's cool is it does harken back to an era of, I remember when I was a kid, I don't go back that far, that's for sure, but when I was a kid, we stayed outside. I remember a lot of people say this, but we stayed outside until the street lights came on. Then you had to come home. And at least at that time, I don't think it was as dangerous, but you know, we rode our bikes and we got into adventures, you know, blowing up frogs, or, you know, climbing trees, or building forts out, you know, out in the woods, or whatever it was. You just did stuff outside, and you went on adventures. You'd pack you a sandwich and get on your old BMX bike, and you'd go have adventures. And to me, this knife kind of reminds me of that era. Here, I'll show you the main blade. Got to do it off camera because I bump everything. You can see, once again, it's got some scratches. Shows a little use. Not too bad for having it since 2009. But it is a great little blade. Takes a razor's edge. Got a good heat treat like all the Rough Riders. It's not you know, it's not a super steel or anything like that. I don't know their blend, but I think it's about as good as Case Knives steel. Seems to be. But it's a great little knife with the matte strike pulls. And then I'll show you the secondary blade here. It has a pin blade for the secondary blade. Pretty much all you need to get stuff done. And I'll show you the snap on it. It's got about I'd say about a 6 or 7 pull for a little knife. You hear that? It's got a really good little snap. And we'll go around the outside of it. If you look here, you'll see that it's a really well built knife. Look at the transitions where the bone turns into the bolster. Look at those springs. I'll try to get up really close. There is no gap. There's maybe at the tiniest of hairline gap right there. You can barely see. But it has been finished really well. The pins are all flush to the bone. And it's just a great little knife. And yeah, it's one of these handy little knives that you don't even really think about. It's just, you know, it's a great little knife. It's small. It gets everything you need done. In fact, after making this video, I'm going to go to the gym, and I think I'm going to throw this little knife in my pocket. And it'll be my little gym knife, because it goes right into a pair of workout shorts or a pair of jeans or whatever. And pretty much for all the tasks I use a knife for, this little guy will do it. And it is one of my favorites, even though it's not an expensive knife. It really is one of my favorites. I think I ended up paying about $8 for it at the time. I think that was the going rate of these knives. And it's really, really well built. I can't, you just kind of got to see it in person, but let's look at the centering here. They got the centering on point. See, the little pin blade is dead centered. The main blade, we'll get up close here. Look at the centering there. And I don't know for sure, but I think these early ones, I think they really, really did a good job. I think since they just came out, they had a point to prove. But they really, really did a good job. The fit and finish on them is excellent. And this has been a good little knife. And I've pretty much done everything with it. When I used the knife, if I went out to eat, I'd cut up my steak with this knife, whatever. And it's not a knife I purposely carried. I just carried it because I liked it. You know, Barlow to me is just... And the fact that it's a Rough Rider made in China, that's all right, because the original... the original Barlows were made to be an inexpensive working man's knife. And that is what I think Rough Rider does. Except I think they were probably built... These are probably built a lot better than the original Barlows, which I do think originated in England, if I'm not mistaken. And I think if I remember when I was a little kid, they would sell Barlow knives. Maybe some of y'all remember. They would sell these Barlow knives on a little cardboard placard held in with some kind of little rubber band thing. And yeah, you would buy them for $1 or $2 or whatever it was. And but I tell you what, this is a really quality knife, and for $8, I mean, I am really surprised. This it's not as pretty because the bone is not as pretty, but I think this is every bit as good as a case Barlow that I used to own that I ended up giving to a friend because he did me a favor. But I think it's a great knife. I like the a friend of mine thought that looked really goofy, but I like the horseshoe on the bolster. I think that's all right. Doesn't hurt anything. And I don't know if there's a real collector market now, but there are some guys that I know that do collect these old Rough Rider patterns, and they're actively seeking out this this jigging pattern on the bone. Some of these older designs with the different spelling. I just like this knife. I like it purely on the purpose of a knife. I don't care what it costs. I just like this little knife. Anyway, just talking about knives. I appreciate you watching, taking the time. If you want to, please like this video and subscribe. This is kind of my style and how I do knife videos, and I would like to see you come back, and maybe we can talk more about knives. If you got any questions or want to talk about a knife you have or any experience with these Rough Riders, please leave it down below there. And we will talk to y'all down the road.